Christmas. This is my boy Dusty right here. This is the man out of all my dogs. This is the alpha. You want to say hello, Dusty? Huh? You want to say hello? All right. Off to the side, buddy. Off to the side. This video is about Attica Prison. Attica Prison is, there's 50-something prisons in New York State. And out of those 50 prisons, Attica Prison tends to be the most dangerous prison out of all of them. Not to say that every prison can't be dangerous and isn't dangerous, because they are. But out of the 50-something prisons in New York, you have Dannemora, Clinton Correctional Facility. You have Greenhaven Correctional Facility. You have a lot of them, but Attica is definitely one of the most serious, if not the most serious prisons that the state has to offer. It was the second prison that I entered. I was sent from Sing Sing to Attica. Attica is in Attica, New York. It's probably 30, 40 miles from the Canadian border. It gets absolutely freezing up there. Really cold, really short summers, long winters up there. And I spent about 6 years in Attica after I left Sing Sing. I got kicked out of Sing Sing. So Attica, 70% of the population is serving a life sentence. So there's some very serious guys up there. That means that a lot of them will never go home. A lot of them will be there till the day they die, which means they don't have much to lose. Attica is also known as a disciplinary prison. So when you get kicked out of another prison, like I got kicked out of Sing Sing, they send you to Attica as a punishment. Sing Sing that I was in was one of the loosest prisons I was in, where the prisoners like almost run the show in Sing Sing. They do whatever they want. They walk down the hallway smoking weed. They're screaming and yelling like crazy in the halls all night long. And Attica is the complete different. Attica is like close to almost like a boot camp compared to prisons, you know. But I'll explain what it was like to walk into this facility. I got packed up in Sing Sing for cursing out the warden. I had some words with the warden, so they shipped me up to Attica. And there was probably about 30 of us on the bus going up there. But they dropped prisoners off along the way. Then we spent the night in a prison called Auburn Prison, which is disgusting. The bus makes stops along the way. We spent a night or two in Auburn. And then when we get to Attica, there's about 6 of us that are going into the facility. And they're screaming and yelling, you know, as we're on our way up there. You know, you're not having a peaceful ride. And the way they chain and shackle you is crazy, too, in New York State. So what happens is they not only put a pair of handcuffs on you when they move, but they put a black box that locks over the handcuffs. So you have no movement at all. Usually you have the chain where you can move a little bit, but then the black box locks over them. Then they take a steel chain, put it through a loop in the black box, wrap the chain around your body. So you're really handcuffed like this, and you only have a little movement. And then they put your shackles on your ankles and shackle you to another prisoner. And you guys got to go in step together to walk. And you're on the bus like that for an 8-10 hour ride, which is absolutely horrific, you know, because Attica is all the way up there. And so there's a lot of noise on the bus, but not when we pull into the facility. When we actually pull into the facility, the bus fell quiet because the building itself is very intimidating. Attica has a 40-foot high cement wall around it. It has the gun towers all over. It looks very archaic, almost like an English castle. And, you know, with the reputation of the Attica riots, and everyone knows it's a serious place, the bus falls quiet when you pull in there. And when we get into the facility, they bring us right into this little caged-in area and sit us down. And to this day, it was one of the biggest men that I ever saw in my life, the correctional officer that came to greet us. Without exaggerating, this officer was about 6'9", 6'10", well over 400 pounds, like an Andre the Giant looking guy. And you could see that something was wrong with him. That he looked inbred, you know, and it's such a small town up there that who knows what the fuck they're doing. But this guy looked freaky. He had sunken in eyes. His forehead was too big. It was abnormal. His hands looked abnormal. And the 6'9", 400 pounds really freaks you out. But when he walks in there, he's not really a mean guy. He doesn't yell. He's like, listen, I don't like to welcome people to prison. He said, but welcome to Attica. He said, I'm going to explain the rules to you real quick. He says, and he says, we'll get you to where you have to go. He says, have any of you ever been here before? None of us had. So he says, we understand you guys are going to fight in Attica. He says, you're men, you're locked up. You need to get things off your chest. There's going to be physical altercations. He says, and I want you to know we're going to let you fight. We'll let you get 3 minutes, 5 minutes to get the heat off your chest. He said, but when we tell you to break it up, you got to break it up. He says, now, if you want to fight and use weapons, he says, we're going to tell you to stop. He says, if you don't stop, people are going to get hurt. He says, and if you're using weapons out in the yard, you'll probably get shot because there's men in the tower with AR-15s, you know, and they'll shoot you. They shoot to kill. They're instructed to shoot to kill, not shoot to wound. And he said the most important rule is if you assault one of our officers. He said, if you assault one of our officers, we will probably beat you to death. He says, and if you make it to the hospital, he said, you will have many, many broken bones when you get there. This was true to form. In the 6-7 years I was there, I definitely watched them kill between 5 and 10 guys. I never see it with my own eyes because they don't do it in front of anyone. They have ways to go about it. This way they can say they were pat frisking a prisoner and the prisoner attacked them and they, in defense, ended up killing him. And there's nobody there to no eyewitnesses because they do it out of sight. You know, there were no cameras inside of the facility, so they were able to get away with this. Well, Attica is a real serious place. And so when you move throughout the facility, unlike other prisons, it almost runs like a boot camp. There's no talking in the hallways. In other prisons, they're screaming and yelling. The prisoners are moving around. In Attica, there's no talking in the hallways. Dead silence. And you hold your ID card up like this when you come downstairs to go into the hallway. You don't walk anywhere alone. There's a few places they'll send you with a pass. Like if you're going on a visit, they'll write a pass and you can go. But you go to commissary with a police escort. You go here, you know, to medical with a police escort. You go to the package room with a police escort. They escort you everywhere because of the 1971 riots in Attica, which I believe happened in September, around September 9th, if I'm sure. And that's where about 30 people were killed. The thing about the Attica riot, which many people don't know, is that the prisoners didn't kill anyone in the Attica riot. The governor who gave permission for the National Guard to storm the prison, the National Guard opened fire and they killed the guards and they killed the prisoners. So like the 11 guards that were killed, or whatever the number was, 7, they were killed by the National Guard who raided the prison. And the reason Attica rioted is because they wanted some rights. They wanted a better health care. They wanted the use of a law library. They wanted more showers. They wanted telephone. They were only allowed to receive mail once a week. They wanted more mail. So they were fighting for these things and they ended up taking over the prison and it ended horrifically. A lot of people were killed. Like I said, 30 something people were killed, pardon me. So when you move through Attica, there's a lot of discipline. You know, there's quiet in the hallways. Your shirts have to be tucked in. And you're usually in single file. If there's a lot of you, you're in double file. And there's yellow lines on the floor. So when the officer wants you to move to the next yellow line, he'll take his nightstick and bang it off the wall. Forward, march! And then boom, 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 boom. You go to the next yellow line and you stop. And then there's a gate there with an officer. He unlocks the gate, lets everyone through, locks the gate. Officer bangs the stick. Forward, march! And it's really regimented. You know what I mean? It's really controlled. And you can't move anywhere without the prison. There's a locked steel gate with a guard every 50 yards, every 40 yards. So there's no way to really move around, you know. And it's a serious place. It's a real serious place. It's an intimidating place. And so about 3 of us are going into this D block area. There's 5 different blocks. There's A block, which they call Afghanistan. A block houses people who still have a educational need. They haven't received their high school diploma or GED. So they put you in A block mostly because that's where you go to school. And A block is also for people who are released from solitary confinement. confinement. So A block is pretty dangerous. They call it Afghanistan. I was there for a little while. Very nerve-wracking. You know what I mean? A lot of young kids, a lot of gang kids. They're off the hook. They're cutting each other, stabbing each other. I mean, it's nuts. A block is Afghanistan. Then you have B block, which is a lot of vocational training. Prisoners that run vocational groups. You have C block, which is the metal shop. This is where they fabricate cabinets, tables, chairs, desks that the prison sells outside of the prison. And that's where there's a lot of metal, and there's always a way to move it around, a lot of steel. You know, that's C block. And then you have D block. D block is where the riot had originated in 1970, and you can still see some bullet holes in the brick wall outside. You know, D block also houses part of the honor block. Part of D block is the honor block, and that's another story. And then there's E block, which is on the other side of the prison. A lot of people like to go to E block because there were doors instead of bars on your room. You know, you would have a door that you shut. So it was almost like a second honor block, E block. So that's what it was, A, B, C, D, and then E, you know, and that's how the prison was set up. There's a big tower in the middle with the blocks. If you look at an aerial view of it, you get a better perspective of what the prison looks like. So they're bringing us into D block. I'm just coming into the prison, nervous. I'm in Attica, you know, 28 years old, don't know what to expect. You know, you never know when you go into a new prison what it's going to be like. You know, is someone not going to like your face? Is a guard not going to like you? You know, in the old prison I was in, you get a little more comfortable, if you could use that word, because you learn the routine, you know everyone, you know how everything works. And then you get moved to a new prison, you don't know what's going to go on in a new prison. That's just the way it is, you know. And so when you go in there, you don't have any property, because you might not get your property that you travel with for 4 or 5 days. It's got to go through processing. It's on the bottom of the bus that you traveled on, and the draft room prisoner workers will take that out, bring it to the offices. The offices will go through it. They'll call you down to get your property. It could take anywhere from a day to a week, whatever it may be. There's no rush. They don't rush with your shit. So you live with nothing for the first few days that you're there. You don't have anything except the blanket that they give you, stuff like that. So we're moving in, we're walking. We met that big inbred guy, and he gave us the rules of the prison. He said, from here on in, don't ask an officer for anything. He said, if you need to know when the commissary is, ask a prisoner. If you need to know where laundry is, ask a prisoner. You need to know how to get to the yard, ask a prisoner. You know, that's the way they like to function it there, to keep the relationship minimal, if not any. You know, so we're going into this D block, and there's only 3 of us going in. I'm last online. They call the first guy, Sanchez. Guy says, here. They said, you're on 40 company, 1 cell. Dylan, yeah, you're on 39 company, 2 cell. And they call my name right here. They said, you put your hands on the wall over there. I said, oh, shit. Why me? What's going on? Why me? I'm just walking into the prison. So I go over to the wall. They have hands painted on the wall, so you know where to put your hands. I put my hands on the wall like a Pat Frisk, you know, type position. And the officer comes up behind me. He says, listen to what I'm telling you. Real intimidating too, you know. And I could feel 3, 4 of them behind me. They said, no matter what you do, don't look away from the wall. You understand? I said, yeah, I understand. The problem is I could smell the vodka on his breath. They're drinking. They're big country boys, too. They're farmers. You have to understand, Attica is in the middle of nowhere, and there was nothing up there but farms. They're all farmers, big farm boys, red, white, and blue American farm boys. And then they built a prison there, you know. And once they built a prison there, and employed 500 men in the town, and they got jobs as correctional officers, right? And I'm not shitting on them. There's some real good dudes there. Some of them are okay. But I'm talking about limited education, limited personal skills. They were farmers, you know, they were the backbone of America, to be honest with you, but they haven't really learned the psychology of dealing with people. And now they've been given a position of power over a minority, you know what I mean? And it's just really not a good combination. When you study psychology, you realize what happens when you give someone power and then put them in control over someone else. You know, and so they got my hands on the wall. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. He tells me to put my hands behind my back. When I put them behind my back, they put me in a pair of handcuffs. And when I get in the handcuffs, he says, turn around. And just as I'm turning around, boom, he punches me right in the nose. right? Breaks my nose open, busts part of my mouth open, knocks me down on the floor. I mean, I got punched, handcuffed by a guy who was a monster, you know what I mean? And it blindsided me right in the face and put me down. As I'm down on the floor, about 3 or 4 of them lean over me and they say, "You ever curse out the warden in this facility, we'll fucking kill you. Do you understand?" I said, "You got it," you know, so now I know what it's about. That was my welcome in Attica. They picked me up off the floor and then led me to my cell, uncuffed me, and threw me in my cell. I was on 38 Company on the flats in Attica, in D Block, and there was no mattress in the cell. They did it on purpose. You know, it was a 2-man cell, but I was the only one in there, and I had to sleep on a cold piece of steel all night. And it was rough because it was cold. It was wintertime. It was a piece of steel. I had no pillow, no mattress, no nothing, and I slept on this piece of steel all night. And when I wake up in the morning, I see one of the other prisoners who's a porter sweeping and mopping. I said, "Listen, please take this phone number, you know, call my family," which he's not allowed to do, but there's ways to do it. He calls his family. Then they use a 3-way call to make the call to my family and let my family know that I've been transferred. Because when they put you on the draft from one prison to another, they shut off your phone. This way you can't inform anybody that you're on the move. Right. And so my family didn't even know that I was on the move for 3 days. They're still thinking that I'm in Sing Sing, you know, and so now I'm in Attica. And when you get to a prison, as I've explained before, for the first 1, 2, 3 days, they leave you locked in your cell until you get cleared by a sergeant or lieutenant. He has to give you clearance to be released into the population. He checks to see if you have any enemies. He checks to see if there's any problems, your security risk, your crime. And then he decides if you go into the general population. So when I go meet the lieutenant, he says to me, "What happened to your face?" Because I took the shot from the cop, you know, and the night before, and it's swollen and busted up. He goes, "What happened to your face?" So I give him the typical line that's famous in prison. I said, I slipped in the shower. You know, that's what everyone's supposed to say. I fell in the shower. So he holds up a picture of me. He said, "This picture was taken of you when you came through the processing room yesterday. There's no marks on your face." He said, "You haven't been given a shower since that time, so you didn't fall in the shower." He said, "Did one of my officers hit you?" And I said, which was really good, I think, the way I responded to this, because it created, I said to him, "Listen," I says, "I'm not ratting on anyone. I'm not telling you if an officer did it. I'm not telling you if a prisoner did it. I'm not telling you anything, because I got to live here for over the next decade. And all I want to do is do my time." I said, "So if you just allow me to do that, I don't have any beef, as long as they don't have a beef with me." I says, "I know," I says, I cursed out the warden in the other facility. I know I can't do that here. I just want to do my time like a man, and that's it." He says, "Very good." He says, "Now, I have to tell you this too." He says that the way they are in Attica, the officers, a lot of the officers are racist in Attica. They don't care for African Americans too much. They don't care for blacks. You know what I mean? Everybody's an individual, but I'm talking about the majority of them. They don't care for them because they're country boys from up in the sticks. You know what I mean? And so when you're white, and you get a little more leeway in the prison. That's just the way it is. He says, "All right, no problem." You know, but what he really respected is that I kept my mouth shut. What he really respected is that I said, "I'm not telling on anyone." What he really respected is that I told him, "I just want to do my time like a man." And I have to say, a lot of the young brothers will go in there and start beefing. "Yo, I don't give a fuck, son. You don't tell me that." And the officers don't respect that. That's where it has nothing to do with skin color. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you conduct yourself. So you could deal with an officer. You don't have to be a rat. You don't have to be a snitch. You don't have to tell them anything. You have to feed their ego. And you could feed their ego by saying, "Listen, I respect your position. I know this is your house. It's not my house. I said, I'm just coming to do my time," right? It's a psychology, right? And so once he hears all that, he's like, "Yo, no sweat. No problem. What job do you want?" I said, "I want radio and television repair," because I knew I had a buddy that moved to Attica a year earlier, and he was in radio and television repair. So he says, "No problem. We'll get you the job. Take care." Boom. And I bounce out of his office, you know. So I get into Attica prison, you know, and I said, it's a real serious place. I met some real serious guys there. I end up on a company with Vinny. Vinny is a real serious dude. Vinny had a double murder, you know, tough guy out of Brooklyn. He didn't play around. He was a, you know, monstrous muscle guy, knew how to do time, had 15 years or so in prison. My buddy Torpy was there. Torpy was a made man out of Rochester, New York. He had like 20 years in prison. He had a life sentence to serve, so there was just a lot of old timers there, a lot of guys doing a lot of time, and a lot of violence in Attica, a lot of violence in Attica. Of course, any prison I went to, I would go right out and attack the handball courts. That was my thing. Go into the weight power workout, play handball. And I was watching a lot of guys get cut. A lot of guys get stabbed. A lot of people's faces get melted with boiling or cooking oil. A lot of people get stabbed and killed over the telephone. The yard is crazy in Attica. When you go into the yard, it is 100% segregated. Like I explained in some other videos, there's segregation, but Attica has it to the T. There's tables in the yard, and all the tables are up against the wall of the yard. The yard is a square, so nobody's hanging out in the middle of the yard, right? Because then someone could come up behind you. So the cruiser guys, the white guys, the Spanish, the Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Bloods, the Nietas, the Latin Kings, everybody's got their own spot, and it's against the wall. And everyone's cordial with one another. Everyone's polite to one another. Everyone's respectful to one another until there's a beef. You know what I mean? The Spanish guys and the white guys tend to say very, 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 very tight-knitted in the prison system. You'll discover that a lot. The mess hall was another dangerous place. The mess hall was very dangerous. When you go to the mess hall, right, you're walking. They only allow 40 people at a time to walk through the halls of Attica, right? And this way they keep control. And in the mess hall, see, you can be, let me explain it this way. You can be in A block, or you can be on one company in Attica, and there could be another guy on another company. You could both be in the prison for 5 years and never see one another. You don't even know he's there. Your friend could be in A block and you're in C block, and you never see each other unless you end up in the infirmary together or going on a medical call out together. You guys eat in different mess halls. You go to commissary on different days. You may work different jobs. So sometimes you don't even know each other's there. And sometimes, once in a while, you'll end up in the mess hall together. For whatever reason, they'll share a mess hall. And guys get to see other guys that they have a beef with. And so they're in the mess hall cutting each other, stabbing each other. I'll give you one incident. You know what I mean? I'm not really a war story guy. You know what I mean? I like to add in the war stories a little bit so you people that are watching know how serious the place can be. I'm more of an educational guy to help you comprehend and understand that the way prison runs and the way it works. But war stories are a part of that. It happens. And I'm sitting in the mess hall, and right across from me, I have a Jamaican guy. He's dreaded out. He got the dreads. You know what I mean? And he's looking at me. And but you have to know how to read people. I don't feel that he's looking at me like he has a problem with me. But for some reason, I'm sitting there eating my meal like this, and he looks at me and he shakes his head a little bit like, what's happening? I shake my head back. How you doing? And I feel like he's trying to tell me something, and then I realize it. I realize he's got a beef with the guy that's sitting right next to me, and he's about to do something. I could tell there was no communication, no verbal communication, because he doesn't even want to let the guy next to me know. But he's telling me, watch out. That's what he's telling me. Watch out. And so I'm ready. And what I do is I take one of my legs and I slide it out from under the table. And as I'm still eating, this way, if I got to move, I got to move. And without hesitation, that Jamaican pulled out a knife and just came leaping over the table and stabbed the other guy right on the side of the table. And I hit the floor, and as soon as they saw he stabbed the guy, he came flying over the table, stabbed him a few times, or the chaos erupts, and the guards shot the tear gas right away. They got tear gas guns. So now the whole thing, and they drop them from the ceiling, boom, 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 and the whole place gets filled with tear gas. And so we're choking, we're dying, everyone's trying to work their way out, and pandemonium ensues, you know what I mean? There was a freaking stabbing in the mess hall, and, but you get used to things like this, which is crazy. As long as I'm not involved, I'm all right. I just want to get the fuck away from the situation. But I'll tell you a funny story about that is that it's all on video too. They have a video camera. When you go into the mess hall, there's a video camera that films everything. Anytime men are in there eating, everything is recorded. So after that incident, they took that videotape and they use it to show new recruits New correctional officers that are coming in, how quick and how fast a situation could explode. And what's crazy about that videotape is there was a prisoner in there named Bruno. Bruno was a good dude, an Italian guy out of Manhattan. He ended up shooting a bus driver like fucking 19 times for some reason. He was out of his mind. He was a really tough guy, and he was really intelligent. Like, he could recite Shakespeare to you, right? You know, he wrote the most beautiful poetry, but he also looked like a gorilla, was tough as hell. Nobody messed with him. And in that video, as the tear gas is falling and everyone's on the floor choking and dying, on the video, there's Bruno finishing his meal, breathing in the tear gas. No effect on the man whatsoever. And that's why they show it to the officers to say, look at the demeanor of some of these guys, the mind frame, the strength, the insanity. You know, this guy's getting stabbed, there's tear gas falling, there's people crazy. And here's Bruno finishing his meal 10 feet away like nothing's happening. You know what I mean? Crazy place. It was a crazy place. I ended up breaking I needed shoulder surgery while I was in there. And so I have the shoulder surgery. I have a rotator cuff surgery while I'm in Attica. And they take you to an outside hospital to do surgery. They take you to Albany Medical Center. So they take me to Albany Medical. They do the shoulder surgery. There's a whole story about that I'll get into later, because the doctor, when they brought me back to the prison, I'll tell you that story later. But they do the shoulder surgery, and then you have to go to physical therapy afterwards inside of the prison. And so they have an area in the medical unit where you go to physical therapy. And I walk in there, and I got 6 weeks of physical therapy that they're going to do. And the girl that's working on me, she's really cute, man. I'm like 28 years old. She's a cute girl, you know, and she's a civilian. She works inside of the prison as a physical therapist. And we're flirting with each other. I go down there 3 times a week for my physical therapy for 6 weeks. And after a couple of times, I go down there, and she was off of work. So I tell one of the other girls, "You're going to take care of me today?" And they said, "No, so and so will kill me if I touch you. She loves you." So once I receive that information, I'm good, you know. And the next time I go down there, I flirt with her a little more. I'm not going to make this that type of video, but I end up sleeping with her. I end up finding a way to sneak off to the side into a room and have sex with this girl, and it's going on for a while. The officers realize something's going on, but they can't catch me, and they hate this more than anything in the world. They probably have 50 officers that want to sleep with this woman, and now she gave herself to one of the prisoners, me, and they're fucking pissed, man. And so one day when I'm going to physical therapy, I turn the corner, and there's like 5, 6 officers with riot gear on, the mask, the black gloves, the nightsticks. They drag me under the steps. They kick me, give me a few punches. Thankfully, they liked me. This is because they liked me. They didn't kill me. They said, "You ever come down here again, we'll fucking kill you. No more physical therapy. Don't come near here again." That was it. That was a wrap. I never went near there again. You know what I mean? I knew it was over. The chick was writing me letters afterwards. I told her, "Listen, chill. You're going to get me killed. I don't want to deal with this situation." You know? So Attica was no joke. You know, out of all the places I did time, though, I met good men there. I did. I met some good men. I met some men that were, I mean, there's just so many stories of guys that lost their lives up there. They're going to be there until the day they die, you know, and it's really unfortunate. You know, it really is unfortunate. Attica is an intense place. It is a prison where a lot of people go to die, you know. I'll tell you a bad fight that I got into in Attica. You know, one more little war story is that I ended up making it into the honor dorm. You know what I mean? And in the honor dome, we could go to the regular general population yard, or we had our own little yard, and we were allowed to have a garden. We were allowed to plant stuff. There was heavy bags and volleyball courts. You could bring your Walkman. Back those days, they had the Walkman. You could bring your Walkman to the yard, listen to a little music, you know, and it was good for guys that wanted to stay out of trouble, you know. And so I was in this honor dorm, and we used to go outside and play volleyball all the time, you know. And just like in the yard, it's usually segregated. The white guys would play the Spanish guys would play the black guys, whatever it would be, you know. And I always said in all my videos, and it's true to heart, is that, you know, you hear the saying to people, "I don't see color." Well, I judge each and every person in my life as an individual. You know, I had fist fights with other white guys because they told me, yo, you can't be go over there talking to the black dudes. I said, you're crazy. Don't ever fucking tell me who I can talk to. I'm going to talk to whoever the fuck I want to talk to. There's a code in prison that you go by, but don't tell me what to do. I'm doing my own time like a man. You know what I mean? And I was ready to handle my business with it. I've had fist fights with white guys over it. You know what I mean? And they understood it. You know what I mean? Listen, I'm going to talk to whoever I want to talk to. I judge each person for how they carry themselves. If I can trust them, if I believe in them, if they're a man of their word, if they carry themselves like a man, that's how I judge people, right? And so we're playing this volleyball game, and it's the white guys versus the black guys. And there's this black dude, he's fucking huge. And every day we're out there, he's disrespectful with his mouth. You know, he's calling us crackers. Crackers this, you fucking crackers that. White boys this, white boys that. You know, and one thing I never allowed was anyone to call me a white boy. I didn't care who they were. I said, you call me a white man. I'm not a white boy. I'm a white man. You want me to call you a black boy? No, you want me to call you a black man. So call me a white man. You know what I mean? That's just a common respect that you should have in prison. But because they outnumber so much, they used to get reckless with their mouth. And this guy particular used to shout, and I used to say every day as we're playing the volleyball, this guy's going to catch me on a bad day, man. I told my friend he's going to catch me on a bad day. I'm telling you, there's going to be a problem because he's disrespectful as hell, you know. And then that day came, you know, and it was really like my friend goes up to spike the ball, and he starts shouting, you fucking crackers can't play for shit. So I go flying under the net, man. And some people get in between us, you know. And I said, listen, if I ever hear that fucking word come out of your mouth again, I says, it's over. I'm telling you. I says, I'm breaking your fucking jaw. You know what I'm saying? So people are trying to calm it down, you know. My man Ty Lib, who was a good dude, a Muslim dude, listen, Joe Fish, forget about it. Let it go. Let it go. You know what I mean? You guys fucking shake hands. Let it go. Right. And so he calms the situation down and we shake hands. I shake hands with the big dude. You know what I mean? And it's over with. Once you shake hands, all right, it's over with. Or it's supposed to be over with if you're a man, right? But I'm not dealing with a fucking man. I'm dealing with a piece of shit. That's what I was dealing with. So in my mind, I think it's over with. And in this situation, I made a mistake. Right? I let my guard down because after the volleyball game, we go over to the wall to drink a little water and take a break before the next game. There's a little water spout by the brick wall. And as I fill up my bottle and I'm holding my bottle up like this, drinking, out of the corner of my eye, I see something and it's his fist coming forward and he catches me in the side of the face. But I was able to move a little to take the brunt of the force off. And when I turn, the guy jumps on my back. Big mistake. I'm squatting like 500 and change at the time, more than that. So I fucking push him off my back. He slams off of the wall and I turn around and I start demolishing this guy. And one thing about me, I don't say this to sound like a tough guy, man. I always told people I love to fight. I grew up fighting. And where this guy made a mistake is I was hitting the heavy bag 2 times a day for the past 2-3 years. I was out hitting the bag every day. I can go on that bag for an hour, 2 hours straight. You know, I had some endurance. My shot was really good. And I get this guy up against the wall, and it was like a David and Goliath. This guy was twice my size. And I got him stuck up against the wall by these bushes, and I'm going to work on him. Bang, 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 bang. And all of a sudden, I realized I got him because at first he was keeping up. The big guy was keeping up, but then his offense was gone. He went into defense, and I start crushing him with lefts. Boom, boom, boom. His face is breaking open. He goes down on the floor. When he goes down on the floor, everyone starts breaking it up. I turn around and all the officers are watching from the windows, right? All the prisoners are watching. They're all looking down into the yard. They watch me take down this guy like a tree trunk who was 3 times my size. Right. So immediately they call us into the building. We got to go into the building and he's fucked up. This guy's broke up, cracked eye, cracked face. I did good. I did good in this one. And he learned a lesson because he made a mistake. This guy made a mistake. Right. He learned from it. So but you have to worry about repercussions afterwards. Now you got to think about everything. But I have Talib in my corner, and Talib was a very powerful Muslim inside of the prison who really loved me. I did a lot of things with Talib. We did a lot of business together. We talked a lot. We were on the same company. Tyler was a great guy, man. I miss him. And we go back into the prison, and I said, listen, Tyler, I said, he's disrespecting me like crazy. He's disrespecting the white guys like crazy. I would never do that. You know how I carry myself. I treat everybody, which is the truth. And Ty Lib is like, you're 100% right. He said, let me bring you to his cell, right? And the officers allowed it. You know, we even went to the officers because they saw what happened. And they're like, let them talk it out. So Ty Lib brings me to his cell. I actually became good friends with that brother, the one I got into the fight with. We became good friends, not the best of friends. You know, the problem was his ego was hurt. His ego was crushed because here he was, a black guy twice my size, and a little white guy beats him up in prison. So he's got to live with that, and they don't like that. You know what I mean? But the reality of this situation was it was a fair one-on-one fight. He was the one being disrespectful, and that's what happens. But like I said, I even gave him some things to send his children on the street when it was his kid's birthday. I had some cool like things that some of the prisoners made, and you know we put water under the bridge and let it go, you know. But in Attica, you had to be prepared. There was tension all the time. There was beefs all the time. When I say you had the officers had a lot of respect for me for several reasons. And again, I swear I don't say this to pat myself on the back. They respected me, number one, because they saw me fight like that. They like that. When they see a guy who holds his own and he'll fight anyone and he don't give a shit, they like that. They respect that. They're big country boys, like I told you. Second is they knew I wouldn't rat on a prisoner, on an officer. I'm not telling on no one. I'm doing my time, right? They like that. And they just like the way that I carried myself. And I used a lot of psychology with them. Let's say, as an example, they need to be, you heard the saying, shit rolls downhill. So an officer works the area where we lock. A sergeant comes to check every few hours. Then the lieutenant comes once a night. When the sergeant walks, if the housing area is filthy, who's going to get in trouble? The officer's going to get in trouble, right? And then what's the officer going to do? He's going to take it out on us. How's he going to take it out on us? It's called getting put on the burn. He shuts the TV for the night. He does this. He doesn't let anyone go to recreation, whatever it may be. That's it. Everyone's there. He doesn't give anyone a shower that night because shit rolls downhill. So the officer would go to someone and say, listen, I need the bathroom clean because the sergeant's going to walk soon. And the prisoner would say, that ain't my fucking job. I ain't doing that shit, man. We'll get someone else to do that shit. Right? Listen, I would explain to the prisoner, even though it's not your job, just go bang it out. It's going to take 15 minutes to go do it. Nah, fuck him, man. If I don't give a fuck, I'm not doing it. Okay, don't do it. You think this is your house? Go ahead, don't do it, right? So I wouldn't go do it, me personally, unless the officer asked me. But when the officer would ask me to do it, yo, Fish, do me a favor, clean that bathroom up before the sergeant works. No, before the sergeant walks around. No problem, I got it. I go into the bathroom. Even if I'm not going to do it, I still tell the officer, no problem, I got it. And I go into the bathroom, clean it up real quick, 15, 20 minutes, put on a pair of gloves, spray some shit down, wipe it down. Now the bathroom's clean. This way, when the sergeant walks, he always peeks in the bathroom to see if guys are smoking. He peeks in there, bathroom's clean. He don't say nothing to his officer. You know, the garbage is taken out throughout the facility. Everything looks good. Now the officer can put his feet up in his desk and relax. You know what happens when the officer puts his feet up? We, the prisoners, can smoke a joint without worrying about being hassled. The officer's not going to hassle us no more because he's not getting bothered from his boss. And the sergeant don't have to hear it from the lieutenant, right? Shit rolls downhill. So I used to tell these guys, use your brain, man. Use your brain. It ain't about cooperating with them. You're not cooperating with them. You're just saying, yes, sir, learn those words. Yes, sir, no problem. I got it. Don't worry about it. It ain't nothing. And then we can do whatever we want to do. We want to make some hooch and drink some hooch. We got it. You know, Attica was crazy. Attica was crazy. You know, seen a lot of violence though there. I have to admit, a lot of violence. You know, I watched my buddy Carl kill someone in there, you know, over being disrespectful. You know, I watched a lot of guys get killed in there, man. There's a lot of stories in there. There's a lot of stories in there. You know, Attica is a place, what they call a terminal facility. You know, you may never go home from there. You may never go home. And when I was ready to leave Attica after 5-6 years, whatever it was, they put me on the draft to go to another prison. I didn't want to go because that was a place where most people conducted themselves like men in Attica. You weren't going to run your mouth. The little kids that thought they were gangsters and run around crazy in Attica, they mind their P's and Q's real quick there. You know, I could just name some really good guys that were there. There was a lot of them. Mario, Vinny, Torpy, and my buddy Sharif. Boy, my buddy Sharif was there. I'll end with this. I'm on a, I think it was like 42 company in Attica, and they moved me into a cell. And they moved me into a cell, and my neighbor is an Egyptian guy. His name is Sharif. And I don't know him at all. He doesn't know me. And so, you know, once in a while we knock on the wall at night, and we had TVs in our cells, which was nice. We could watch TV. And so one day he says to me, Kupaya Kawa, if I'm saying it right. I don't know what that means. You know, he's Egyptian. And so I says, what? He says, Kupaya Kawa. I says, what's that? He says, coffee. You want some coffee? You know, Sharif was a devout Muslim. You know, he wore the kufi. He prayed 5 times a day. And I said, I don't drink coffee. I'm good. He says, no, have some coffee with me, Egyptian coffee. He got the coffee from this guy, Pali, who was from Palestine. There's people from all over the world in there. So I said, all right, I'll take the coffee. Fucking Sharif. I'm still a coffee drinker to this day now because he gives me this cup of coffee. So I drank the coffee, and this started to build a relationship between me and Sharif. And I really like the guy. I care for him. We start talking, and what I realize is that Sharif is in the same mind frame as me. And what I mean by that is I had stopped doing drugs at this time, and I was, you know, educating myself. And Sharif was the same thing. Sharif didn't do any drugs. He spent time in the Quran. He was sincere. He was a real Muslim. He wasn't one of these guys that came into prison and just converted to Islam. He was born and raised in Egypt and came to America later. His story is very unfortunate. He was railroaded very hard. I'm not going to get into that all that right now. And so we became close friends. You know, we break bread together, we eat together, we tell stories, we work out together. You know, a lot of, you could say, fun times. Even, you know, it's not fun, you're in prison, but you're making the best of the bad situation. And eventually, when I left Attica, you know, I don't get to see Sharif anymore. Sharif was serving 25 years to life. And when I came home, when I was released, I wanted to find Sharif. You know what I mean? And I went onto the computer and I searched and I searched and I found him. And I kept in touch with him. And I drive up there to visit him and send him packages if he needs it, sends him money if he needs it. I came home and Sharif was stuck there. And they finally let Sharif out, but they deported him back to Egypt. And Sharif is in Egypt now. And we still FaceTime each other all the time. I still try and help when I can because Egypt is very rough. The life is very rough down there. He would like for anything in the world to come back to this country. He thinks America is one of the greatest places in the world. You know, and that's why he came here. You know, he's not a radical. He was not an extremist. He was a man that came to America to make better dreams for himself and for his family. But he got screwed up. And, you know, he got jammed up, and not by committing a crime either. He was really railroaded. It's a sad situation. I don't want to put his business out there without his permission. But I keep in close touch with him. I love him. He's my brother. And I met a lot of good guys in Attica, a lot of good guys there. But it's a place, with all that said and done, that is one of the most dangerous places I've ever been, one of the scariest places I've ever been. And there were many nights, you heard me say, I laid on the floor of my cell and I wanted to kill myself. You know, you are definitely go to sleep every night not knowing what's going to happen the next day. Is there going to be stabbings? Is there going to be murders? Are people going to be set on fire? I watched officers get stabbed. I've watched the craziest shit there, man. The craziest shit. Attica is no joke. So hopefully none of you ever have to experience that. And if you're a kid out there who's going crazy, a kid out there who's committing crimes, a kid out there who's doing drugs, and you think it can't happen to you, it could happen to you. I'm the son of a lieutenant and the grandson of a police commissioner. And I ended up in fucking Attica. I ended up in prison for 20 years, almost 20 years. It could easily happen to you. Don't play around. It's no place to be. My family members were dying off while I was in there. And there were people in there that don't give a shit. I didn't even tell you about the fistfights I had with officers with this. It's a crazy place, man. It's a crazy place. Hopefully none of you ever have to experience that. All right, guys? Bye.